The conference chamber hummed with tension, its crystalline walls reflecting the holographic displays that surrounded Major Jessica Miller. Her cybernetic eye swept across the assembled alien dignitaries, each representative from a different galactic civilization, watching her with a mixture of curiosity and barely concealed contempt. 12 hours earlier, she had been nothing more than a footnote in a classified military report. Now she was the unexpected centerpiece of humanity's most critical diplomatic moment. The mission had begun like countless others, a routine patrol in the contested trading lanes between the Orion Arm and the Sagittarius Reach. Standard protocol dictated a standard response. But Jessica Miller was anything but standard. Her team had been tracking a notorious pirate consortium for months. The Black Star Syndicate had terrorized merchant ships across 3 star systems, leaving a trail of destroyed vessels and broken economic networks. Traditional military approaches had failed repeatedly. Conventional strategies meant certain defeat. Jessica remembered the briefing room back on the orbital platform. Her commanding officers had given her that look, the one that said they were out of options. "We need a solution that doesn't exist in any military handbook," Colonel Harrison had told her, his weathered face etched with the kind of desperation that comes from years of watching good people die. She had spent 72 consecutive hours developing her plan, not in a high-tech simulation chamber, but in a cramped quarters with nothing more than an outdated computer terminal, 3 cups of rapidly cooling coffee, and a determination that bordered on obsession. The pirate fleet consisted of 12 modified freighters, each retrofitted with military-grade weapons systems that made them more dangerous than most dedicated warships. They moved like a pack of predators, striking vulnerable trade routes with surgical precision. Conventional tracking methods always put them 3 steps ahead of any defensive formations. But Jessica saw something different. She noticed a pattern in their movement, a complex dance of navigation that seemed random but contained a subtle mathematical signature. Most analysts would have dismissed it as statistical noise. Jessica saw a blueprint. Her solution was elegant in its complexity and shocking in its simplicity. By repurposing 3 abandoned communication satellites and developing a quantum-entangled tracking algorithm, she created a network that could predict the pirates' movements with unprecedented accuracy. The attack, when it came, was nothing short of symphonic. As the pirate fleet entered what they believed was an unmonitored sector, Jessica's modified satellites created a cascading interference field. Navigation systems crashed. Weapon platforms became useless hunks of metal. And then, with a precision that seemed almost supernatural, the Earth Defense Fleet emerged from strategic jump points. 12 pirate vessels, 12 minutes. Complete neutralization. No casualties on the human side. No civilian losses. A surgical strike that redefined the concept of military intervention. Now, in this chamber of galactic judgment, Major Miller stood as the embodiment of something the assembled species couldn't quite comprehend. Her cybernetic eye, a result of wounds sustained during the lunar reconstruction conflicts, flickered with combat data. Each micro-movement suggested a lifetime of adaptation, of survival against impossible odds. The Zornik representative, a crystalline being whose body shifted between solid and plasma states, leaned forward. Its translation matrix struggled to capture the nuance of human achievement. "Explain," it demanded, more a command than a request. Jessica's lips curved into a slight smile, the smile of someone who had seen the universe's darkest corners and emerged not just survived, but victorious. "Sometimes," she said, her voice calm and measured, "innovation is our most powerful weapon." The holographic displays began cycling through mission data, sensor logs, tactical analysis, strategic projections. Each frame told a story of improvisation that defied every known military doctrine in the galaxy. The Galactic Concordance had always viewed humans as a young, barely relevant species. They had categorized humanity's applications for interstellar membership as a bureaucratic formality, something to be politely dismissed. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. The mission with the Black Star Syndicate was more than a military operation. It was a statement. a declaration that humanity brought something unique to the galactic table, an approach to conflict that couldn't be quantified, predicted, or easily understood. Major Jessica Miller was about to change everything. Lieutenant Michael Rodriguez adjusted the worn baseball cap on his head, a relic that seemed absurdly out of place in the sterile environment of the Galactic Combat Assessment Chamber. Around him, the most advanced military minds in the known universe watched with a mixture of anticipation and barely concealed condescension. The Zornek simulation was legendary and infamous. No species had ever completed its full scenario with more than a 12% success rate. It was designed as the ultimate test of strategic and tactical capabilities, a crucible that reduced most military teams to nothing more than scattered data points and failed algorithms. The chamber itself was a marvel of quantum engineering. Holographic projections shifted and warped, creating a battlefield that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions. Gravitational fields flickered. Temporal distortions created impossible geometries. It was a nightmare landscape that would drive most strategic minds to complete cognitive breakdown. Rodriguez carried nothing that looked like standard military equipment. To the alien observers, his loadout seemed laughably inadequate. A modified tablet, a length of carbon fiber cord, and what appeared to be a vintage multi-tool from the early 21st century. His combat fatigues were worn, patched in places that suggested multiple repairs rather than replacement. Candidate Rodriguez, a synthetic voice announced, "You will now enter scenario Omega 9. Survival probability 0.03%. A soft chuckle escaped Rodriguez's lips. The sound was so incongruous with the moment that several alien observers physically recoiled. His background was not what the Galactic Concordance expected. 3 tours in the Mars reconstruction conflicts, a decade of urban search and rescue operations across Earth's most challenging environments, survival training that went far beyond standard military protocols. Each experience had been a puzzle, each mission a complex problem to be solved rather than a simple combat scenario. The simulation began. Immediately, the environment transformed. What had been a relatively stable holographic representation erupted into a chaos of shifting realities. Gravity became a suggestion rather than a constant. Space folded and unfolded in impossible patterns. Threat vectors appeared and disappeared faster than most species' neural networks could process. Rodriguez didn't move. He observed. Where most military teams would immediately engage or attempt to fight, he was collecting information. His tablet screen filled with rapid calculations, cross-referencing the simulation's changing parameters against historical conflict data, geological survey information, and psychological warfare principles. The alien observers began to whisper among themselves. Their translation matrices struggled to capture the nuance of what they were witnessing. Most combat simulations followed predictable patterns. Engage the enemy. Secure strategic points. Minimize casualties. Rodriguez was doing something entirely different. He was treating the simulation like a living organism, understanding its rhythms, its breathe, its fundamental nature. His multi-tool came out, not as a weapon, but as a diagnostic instrument. The first major challenge appeared, a quantum entanglement scenario that had defeated every previous participant. Most teams would attempt to fight through it. Rodriguez began to map its underlying structure, identifying the mathematical principles that governed its seemingly random nature. 15 minutes into the simulation, the first alien observer gasped. Something unprecedented was happening. Rodriguez wasn't just surviving. He was understanding. Each movement was calculated but fluid. Each decision seemed to anticipate the simulation's next transformation before it occurred. It was less like watching a military operation and more like observing a complex dance, where the participant was simultaneously the performer and the choreographer. The carbon fiber cord came into play, not as a weapon, but as a measurement tool. Rodriguez was creating a physical representation of the simulation's dimensional shifts, using the cord to map out spatial relationships that existed beyond traditional three-dimensional understanding. His baseball cap, initially seeming like a quirky personal item, revealed hidden sensors, modifications that collected data at frequencies most advanced species couldn't even perceive. 1 hour into the simulation, the alien observers had stopped whispering. They were watching in complete, stunned silence. Lieutenant Michael Rodriguez was rewriting the fundamental understanding of combat itself, and he was just getting started. The observation deck fell silent as Lieutenant Rodriguez continued to navigate the impossible simulation. What the assembled alien species failed to comprehend was the depth of human combat experience, a living, breathing intelligence that transcended traditional military doctrine. Dr. Emma Garrett watched the proceedings with a critical eye. As the lead researcher of human combat psychology, she understood something fundamental that most alien civilizations missed. Conflict for humans was never just about technology or tactical superiority. It was a complex tapestry woven from generations of survival, adaptation, and relentless innovation. Rodriguez's movements told a story far deeper than the immediate simulation. Each decision was a culmination of collective human experience, a neural network that stretched back through centuries of conflict. His urban search and rescue background emerged in subtle ways. The way he mapped dimensional shifts echoed rescue techniques developed during the Great California Earthquake of 2047. The precise angle of his tablet's data collection mirrored communication strategies from peacekeeping missions in the Amazon conflict zones. The Zornik observers began to realize they were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't just a military assessment. It was an anthropological revelation. Dr. Garrett's research had long suggested that human combat effectiveness came from a unique psychological framework. Humans didn't just fight. They adapted. They learned. They transformed challenges into opportunities in ways that defied conventional strategic thinking. Rodriguez's personal history was a testament to this principle. Born in the reconstructed megacity of New Houston, he had grown up in an environment that demanded constant adaptation. The city, rebuilt after catastrophic climate events, was a living monument to human resilience. Every street, every building told a story of survival against impossible odds. His military training had been unconventional from the start. Instead of standard combat protocols, his unit had been trained in complex problem-solving, psychological adaptation, and cross-cultural communication. They were warriors, yes, but they were also researchers, diplomats, and survivors. The simulation began to reveal its true complexity. Dimensional shifts that would have paralyzed most species became a playground for Rodriguez's unique approach. He wasn't fighting the scenario. He was conversing with it, understanding its underlying logic, and reshaping its fundamental parameters. A holographic display captured his thought process. It was less a linear strategy and more a three-dimensional web of possibilities. Where most military minds saw obstacles, Rodriguez saw opportunities. Each potential threat was a puzzle to be solved, each challenge a chance for innovation. The alien observers noticed something extraordinary. Rodriguez wasn't just responding to the simulation. He was anticipating it. His movements suggested a level of predictive analysis that went beyond computational logic. Dr. Garrett knew why. Humans had developed this skill through millennia of survival. From prehistoric hunting grounds to modern urban warfare, the human species had always been defined by its ability to read patterns, to understand the unspoken language of conflict. Rodriguez's tablet displayed a complex algorithm, a hybrid of mathematical projection and intuitive reasoning. It drew from sources as diverse as archaeological conflict studies, psychological profiling, and quantum probability models. Each data point was a thread in a larger tapestry of understanding. The carbon fiber cord he had brought became more than a simple tool. It was a physical representation of human ingenuity, a way of mapping multidimensional spaces that defied traditional geometric understanding. With each movement, he was creating a new language of spatial interaction. 12 minutes into the simulation, the Zornik observers began to understand. This wasn't just a military assessment. It was a fundamental reimagining of combat itself. Rodriguez represented something more than an individual soldier. He was a living embodiment of humanity's most profound strength, the ability to transform chaos into opportunity, to find order in the most complex of systems. The simulation continued to shift and change, but Lieutenant Michael Rodriguez remained constant, a beacon of human adaptability, a testament to a species that had survived and thrived through countless challenges. And he was just getting started. Commander Emily Nakamura watched the simulation unfold, her prosthetic arm humming with a quiet, adaptive energy. The metallic limb was more than a replacement. It was a testament to human resilience, a perfect fusion of biological intuition and technological innovation. The observation deck had become a crucible of tension. Alien species from across the galaxy leaned forward, their sensory appendages twitching with a mixture of confusion and growing respect. Lieutenant Rodriguez was no longer just completing a simulation. He was dismantling everything they understood about warfare. Psychological warfare had always been humanity's most potent weapon. Not the crude manipulation of emotions, but a deep, nuanced understanding of conflict that went beyond simple strategic maneuvers. Rodriguez's background told the real story. Born in the reconstructed urban zones of New Mexico, he had grown up in an environment that demanded constant adaptation. The border regions, once devastated by climate catastrophes and economic collapse, had become a training ground for a new type of human survivor. His earliest memories were of community resilience, families, and neighborhoods that had rebuilt themselves from nothing, time and again. Each challenge was an opportunity. Each setback a lesson to be learned and overcome. The simulation entered its most complex phase. Dimensional barriers began to collapse. Threat vectors appeared and disappeared in millisecond intervals. Most military systems would have crashed, overwhelmed by the computational complexity. Rodriguez remained calm. His tablet became an extension of his consciousness. Each tap, each swipe was a conversation with the underlying structure of the conflict. He wasn't fighting the simulation. He was understanding it, breaking it down to its most fundamental components. The alien observers noticed something extraordinary. Rodriguez wasn't responding to threats. He was anticipating them. His movements suggested a level of predictive analysis that defied computational logic. Dr. Helena Rodriguez, no relation to Michael, but a leading expert in adaptive cognitive systems, had spent decades studying this phenomenon. Humans didn't just process information. They interpreted it through a lens of collective experience, a neural network that stretched back through generations of survival. Michael's left hand moved almost imperceptibly. To the alien observers, it seemed random, but every movement was calculated, drawing from a lifetime of training and a genetic memory of adaptation. The carbon fiber cord he had brought became a living instrument, no longer just a physical tool. It was now mapping the simulation's dimensional shifts in real time. Each twist, each movement created a holographic representation of spatial relationships that most species couldn't even comprehend. 12 minutes into this phase of the simulation, the fundamental nature of human conflict became clear. It wasn't about firepower or technological superiority. It was about understanding, a holistic approach to problem solving that transformed every challenge into an opportunity. His baseball cap, seemingly a casual accessory, revealed hidden layers of technological integration. Microsensors collected data at frequencies that most advanced species couldn't even perceive. It was a perfect representation of human innovation, complex technology disguised as something ordinary and overlooked. The Zornic representative, a crystalline being whose body shifted between solid and plasma states, began to understand. This wasn't just a military assessment. It was a fundamental reimagining of combat itself. Rodriguez represented something more than an individual soldier. He was a living embodiment of humanity's most profound strength, the ability to transform chaos into opportunity, to find order in the most complex of systems. His urban search and rescue training emerged in subtle ways. The precise angles of his movements, the way he mapped multidimensional spaces, these were the same skills he had used to save lives in the most challenging environments on Earth. Rescue missions in collapsing megastructures, emergency responses in quantum destabilized zones. Each experience had been a lesson in adaptation. The simulation continued to shift. Gravitational fields collapsed and reformed. Temporal streams intersected in impossible patterns. Most military systems would have been destroyed. Rodriguez was thriving. Commander Nakamura allowed herself a small smile. The galaxy was about to learn something important about humanity. They were just getting started. The Galactic Archives had never truly understood humanity's combat legacy. What appeared to be a chaotic history of conflict was, in reality, a sophisticated evolution of survival and adaptation. Professor William Ramirez stood before the holographic display, his weathered hands tracing the complex timeline of human warfare. Each conflict was more than a historical footnote. It was a lesson learned, a strategy developed, a collective intelligence refined. From the guerrilla warfare of the Amazon reconstruction to the deep space rescue missions of the lunar conflicts, humanity had written a unique narrative of survival. It wasn't about technological superiority or brute force. It was about something far more profound: the ability to learn, to adapt, to transform. Lieutenant Rodriguez's performance in the simulation was the culmination of thousands of years of human experience. Each movement, each decision was a thread in a complex tapestry of collective memory. The earliest human conflicts had been about survival. Prehistoric tribes fighting against environmental challenges, early agricultural societies defending limited resources, colonial expansions, world wars, technological conflicts, climate catastrophes. Each era had added a layer to humanity's combat intelligence. Modern military training had evolved far beyond traditional combat protocols. Soldiers were now part strategist, part psychologist, part emergency response specialist. The lines between military, diplomatic, and survival skills had blurred completely. Rodriguez's tablet continued to map the simulation's impossible geometries. To the alien observers, it looked like chaos. But to those who understood human methodology, it was a language of survival being spoken in real time. Dr. Elena Martinez, a leading expert in adaptive cognitive systems, had spent decades studying this phenomenon. Humans didn't just fight. They approached conflict as a complex problem to be solved, a puzzle with multiple dimensions and infinite solutions. The Zornik observers began to understand the depth of what they were witnessing. This wasn't just a military assessment. It was an anthropological revelation. Humanity's combat experience was a living, breathing entity. Each conflict had added to a collective intelligence that went beyond individual training. The Mars reconstruction conflicts, the Antarctic survival missions, the Great Oceanic migrations. Each event had been a crucible, forging the unique approach to survival. Rodriguez's movements told a story far deeper than the immediate simulation. The way he adjusted to dimensional shifts echoed rescue techniques from the California megaquake of 2047. His precise data collection mirrored communication strategies from peacekeeping missions in the Amazon conflict zones. The carbon fiber cord became more than a tool. It was a physical manifestation of human ingenuity, a way of mapping multidimensional spaces that defied traditional understanding. Each twist, each movement created a holographic representation of spatial relationships most species couldn't comprehend. Professor Ramirez explained it best in his groundbreaking work, Conflict as Evolution. Humans didn't see challenges as obstacles. They saw them as opportunities for growth, for innovation, for transformation. The simulation continued to shift. Gravitational fields collapsed and reformed. Temporal streams intersected in impossible patterns. Most military systems would have been destroyed. Rodriguez was thriving. His baseball cap, seemingly a casual accessory, revealed hidden layers of technological integration. Microsensors collected data at frequencies most advanced species couldn't perceive. It was a perfect representation of human innovation. Complex technology disguised as something ordinary and overlooked. The alien representatives began to understand. Humanity's combat experience wasn't about weapons or technology. It was about a fundamental approach to problem-solving that transformed every challenge into an opportunity. Generations of survival had created something unique, a combat intelligence that was part mathematical precision, part intuitive understanding, part collective memory. Rodriguez wasn't just a soldier. He was a living archive of human resilience. Each movement told a story. The precise angle of his hand, the way he interpreted dimensional shifts, the complex algorithm dancing across his tablet's screen. These were the culmination of thousands of years of human survival. The Galactic Concordance was about to learn an important lesson. Humanity's strength wasn't in its technology or its firepower. It was in its ability to adapt, to learn, to transform. And they were just getting started. The final stage of the simulation descended like a quantum nightmare. Zornak technicians exchanged nervous glances as the combat scenario transformed. This was the Omega Protocol, a multi-dimensional conflict mathematically proven to be unwinnable by every known galactic species. Civilizations had submitted their most advanced military teams to this scenario, only to watch them collapse into computational dust. Lieutenant Michael Rodriguez remained perfectly calm. The chamber around him dissolved into a maelstrom of impossible geometries. Spatial dimensions twisted and folded. Temporal streams intersected at impossible angles. Threat vectors appeared and disappeared faster than most neural networks could process a single data point. Most military systems would have crashed immediately. Rodriguez's systems were just warming up. His Modify tablet became an extension of his consciousness. Each tap, each swipe was a conversation with the fundamental structure of chaos itself. He wasn't fighting the scenario. He was understanding it, breaking it down to its most fundamental components. Commander Emily Nakamura watched from the observation deck, her prosthetic arm subtly calibrating in response to the simulation's complexity. She recognized the pattern. This was more than a test. It was a crucible designed to break any conceivable strategic approach. The Zornak had developed this scenario over 3 centuries. It incorporated quantum entanglement, multi-dimensional threat projection, and computational complexity that would reduce most military intelligences to random noise. No species had ever survived beyond the first 17 seconds. Rodriguez had been running for 3 minutes. His urban search and rescue training emerged in sublime ways. The precise angles of movement, the way he mapped multidimensional spaces. These were the same skills he had used to save lives in the most challenging environments on Earth. Rescue missions in collapsing megastructures. Emergency responses in quantum destabilized zones. Dr. Helena Rodriguez, no relation to Michael, but a leading expert in adaptive cognitive systems, had a theory. Human survival wasn't about technological superiority. It was about a fundamental approach to problem solving that transformed every challenge into an opportunity. The carbon fiber cord became a living instrument, no longer just a physical tool. It now mapped the simulation's dimensional shifts in real time. Each twist created a holographic representation of spatial relationships that most species couldn't even comprehend. Alien observers began to understand something profound. This wasn't just a military assessment. It was a fundamental reimagining of conflict resolution. Rodriguez's baseball cap, seemingly a casual accessory, revealed hidden layers of technological integration. Microsensors collected data at frequencies most advanced species couldn't perceive. Complex technology disguised as something ordinary and overlooked. The simulation entered its most brutal phase. Gravitational fields collapsed and reformed in millisecond intervals. Temporal streams began to cannibalize themselves. Most military systems would have been utterly destroyed. Rodriguez was thriving. His movements suggested a level of predictive analysis that defied computational logic. Where most would see chaos, he saw patterns. Where others would panic, he found opportunity. Each dimensional shift became a puzzle to be solved. Each impossible threat a challenge to be understood. The Zornak representatives watched in growing disbelief. Their most complex scenario, designed to be mathematically unwinnable, was being systematically decoded, understood, and neutralized. 12 minutes into the scenario, something unprecedented happened. Rodriguez wasn't just surviving. He was beginning to control the simulation itself. Subtle adjustments to his data collection revealed an underlying structure that no previous team had even recognized. He was rewriting the fundamental rules of the conflict scenario in real time, turning an impossible challenge into a comprehensible problem. Commander Nakamura allowed herself a small smile. The galaxy was about to learn an important lesson about humanity. They were just getting started. The Galactic Concordance chamber fell into a silence so profound it seemed to bend the very fabric of reality. Lieutenant Michael Rodriguez stood at the center of a transformative moment in interstellar history. His performance in the simulation was more than a military assessment. It was a complete reimagining of combat, strategy, and survival. Admiral Xiaoping Chen, head of Earth's Interstellar Defense Committee, watched the proceedings with a mixture of pride and calculated restraint. Humans had always been underestimated. It was a pattern as old as their species, a pattern they had turned into their greatest strength. The alien representatives began to understand something fundamental about humanity. This wasn't just about military capability. It was about a unique approach to problem-solving that defied every known galactic paradigm. Dr. Elena Martinez stepped forward, her holographic presentation materializing around Rodriguez. Decades of research into human adaptive cognitive systems were about to be validated in the most spectacular way possible. What you've witnessed, she addressed the assembled species, is not an anomaly. This is the culmination of humanity's evolutionary approach to conflict. The simulation data played out in intricate holographic displays. Each moment Rodriguez had navigated the impossible scenario was broken down, analyzed, dissected. What appeared to be chaos was revealed as a complex, intentional strategy that most species couldn't even begin to comprehend. Zornek military advisors began requesting detailed logs. Quardlek's diplomatic representatives initiated immediate communication protocols. The Nexus Collective's research teams were already preparing comprehensive studies. Military academies across the galaxy would be rewriting their fundamental training doctrines. Human advisors would become the most sought-after strategic consultants in known space. Rodriguez's background told the real story. Born in the reconstructed urban zones of New Mexico, he represented a generation forged in constant adaptation. The border regions, once devastated by climate catastrophes and economic collapse, had become a training ground for a new type of human survivor. Commander Emily Nakamura approached the central platform. Her prosthetic arm, a marvel of human engineering that was part medical device, part adaptive technology, hummed with a quiet, powerful energy. "This is why no one questions human combat experience," she said, her voice cutting through the chamber's tension. The holographic displays continued to cycle. Each frame told a story of innovation, of turning impossible challenges into opportunities for growth. Rodriguez had not just completed the simulation. He had transformed it, revealing layers of strategic thinking that most species hadn't even conceived were possible. Alien diplomatic channels began to light up. Trade agreements were being reconsidered. Military alliances were being reevaluated. Humanity was no longer just another species seeking galactic membership. They were becoming a fundamental force of strategic innovation. Professor William Ramirez, the leading expert on human conflict evolution, had predicted this moment. His groundbreaking work, Survival as Strategy, had argued that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to learn, adapt, and transform. The carbon fiber cord Rodriguez had used, seemingly a simple tool, was now being studied by top research institutions. It represented more than a piece of equipment. It was a symbol of human ingenuity, a physical manifestation of their ability to find solutions in the most unexpected places. Military representatives from dozens of species began requesting detailed briefings. How could humans develop this approach? What were the underlying principles of their adaptive strategy? What could be learned from their unique perspective on conflict resolution? Rodriguez remained calm, a living embodiment of the research and training that had brought him to this moment. His baseball cap, with its hidden sensors and adaptive technologies, was now a subject of intense scientific interest. The Galactic Concordance was experiencing a fundamental shift. Humanity was no longer viewed as a young, inexperienced species. They were now recognized as a critical strategic asset, a civilization with a unique approach to problem-solving that could reshape galactic understanding. Admiral Chen allowed herself a subtle smile. Decades of preparation, of building a military and diplomatic approach that valued adaptability over raw power, were being vindicated in this single moment. They were just getting started. The universe was about to change. Lieutenant Michael Rodriguez stood before the Galactic Concordance, no longer just a representative of Earth's military, but a symbol of humanity's unprecedented potential. The simulation had been more than a test. It was a declaration of what humanity represented. Admiral Xiaoping Chen stepped forward, her decades of diplomatic experience etched into every measured movement. Behind her, a holographic display began to unfold, a comprehensive overview of human history that would reshape galactic understanding. "We are not what you expected," she began, her voice calm and resolute. The assembled species leaned forward. The chamber itself seemed to hold its breath. Humanity's journey was unlike any other in galactic records, a species that had emerged from near extinction multiple times, a civilization that had transformed planetary devastation into opportunity, a culture that saw challenges not as obstacles, but as invitations to innovate. Dr. Elena Martinez's research materialized around Rodriguez. Decades of study into human adaptive cognitive systems were now more than academic theory. They were a blueprint for survival itself. The holographic displays showed humanity's evolution, from prehistoric survival in harsh environments to the reconstruction of Earth after multiple global catastrophes. Each challenge had been a crucible, forging a unique approach to problem-solving that defied conventional understanding. Rodriguez represented something more than an individual soldier. He was a living embodiment of a species that had transformed survival into an art form. The Zornek representatives, whose combat simulation had been considered unbeatable, now saw something entirely different. Humanity wasn't just another species seeking galactic membership. They were a fundamental force of innovation and adaptation. Commander Emily Nakamura stepped forward, her prosthetic arm, a marvel of biological and technological integration, humming with quiet energy. "Our strength," she explained, "has never been about superior technology or raw military power. It's about our ability to learn, to adapt, to transform." The carbon fiber cord Rodriguez had used during the simulation was now being studied by top research institutions across multiple star systems. What had appeared to be a simple tool was revealed as a complex instrument of strategic thinking. Professor William Ramirez's lifetime of research was being vindicated in real time. His theories about human conflict evolution, once considered radical, were now becoming the foundation of a new understanding of strategic intelligence. The alien diplomatic channels were already shifting. Trade agreements were being reconsidered. Military alliances were being reevaluated. Humanity was no longer just another species. They were becoming a critical asset to galactic civilization. Rodriguez's baseball cap, with its hidden sensors and adaptive technologies, had become a symbol of human innovation. Complex technology disguised as something ordinary and overlooked. The Galactic Concordance began to understand the true nature of human potential. It wasn't about individual achievement. It was about a collective intelligence that could turn the most impossible challenges into opportunities for growth. Dr. Helena Rodriguez, a leading expert in adaptive cognitive systems, had always believed that human survival was about more than technological superiority. It was about a fundamental approach to problem-solving that could transform entire civilizations. The simulation had been more than a military assessment. It was a declaration of humanity's place in the universe. Admiral Chen's final words echoed through the chamber. "We are not here to conquer. We are here to collaborate, to learn, to grow." The assembled species began to understand. Humanity brought something unique to the galactic community, an approach to existence that was part innovation, part resilience, part unbridled potential. Lieutenant Michael Rodriguez stood as a living testament to this potential. His journey from the reconstructed urban zones of New Mexico to this moment was a story of continuous adaptation, of turning limitations into strengths. The universe would never be the same. Humanity was just getting started.